Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Pepper Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy, people dealing with drama, cheating, lies, breakups, and even revenge. Some stories are wild, some are emotional, but all of them will keep you watching. If you like real talk and real situations, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stick around. This is Crazy Pepper Revenge, where the stories get spicy.
I'm out of here, I declared. Fine, and don't bother coming back, my wife Jenna shot back. Normally, I'd toss out a go to hell as I stormed out, but today I aimed for more civilized parting words. We've slung similar barbs over our 14 years hitched, but this time I won't be circling back. In a few days, she'll grasp what I meant. Over the past 6 months, Jenna turned into a verbal wrecking ball. I couldn't figure it out. Her jabs, to put it mildly, stung. I started dodging her to keep things from boiling over. Each day, I'd stall longer in the car. Sometimes I'd slip back home after Jenna and Carrie, our 13-year-old, finished supper. I had to take care of me. Sometimes there'd be leftovers, but lately, they vanished before I return. I go by Kurt Kaminsky, technically David Kurt Kaminsky, but my old man's also David, so they dubbed me Kurt from the start. I'm Polish, well, sort of, an American with Polish roots. I've heard all the jokes, and as the lone Pole I know apart from Dad in this 100,000 strong town, I become the punchline. Technically, I'm half Polish. The other half from Mom's side is German, French, Irish, and English. But since I'm a Kaminsky, I'm the Pole. My soon-to-be ex-wife ain't who I thought. I only caught wind of this 4 weeks back. As I said, I was keeping clear of her due to the misuse. After a few dinners out, one Monday evening, I hit a diner. In a booth ready to order, I overheard two guys chatting in the next booth. Caught a phrase with Pole and tuned in. "So how long you been with the Poles, missus?" "Since they tied the knot. Heck, I even bedded her on their wedding day and he's clueless." The first voice was unknown, but the second I knew. My best bud, George Carey. I froze. They kept yakking, but I heard zilch until George spilled. "Yeah, we rendezvous at least twice a month. Kurt's so clueless he's none the wiser." Just then, the waitress came to take my order. Quietly, I murmured, "Sorry," got to jet, and bolted, making sure they didn't catch sight of me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Jenna, my wife, with my closest buddy, the guy who stood by me at the altar. He's also my go-to mechanic, though not officially on staff, more like an exclusive contractor I rely on solely to fix and inspect all my cars. In case you're wondering, I run a used car dealership. Yeah, I'm a used car salesman. Heard all the jokes and jabs, but business is booming. George has always been a top-notch mechanic, and I keep him busy and compensated well. I wanted to bring him on as staff, but he cracked a joke about not respecting himself if he worked for a Pole. Said it in jest, but I sensed he meant it. Still, I took him on as an independent contractor, though he wasn't all that independent. Truth is, I was his sole source of income. Leaving the diner, I cruised the streets doubting what I'd heard. Was it true or just his boasting? I might have hired a PI, but if what he said was legit, their meetups were sparse. Might end up a waste of cash. I decided to snoop through her phone and email. Back home, Jenna was her usual self. Fine by me. I needed the truth before talking to her. When she dozed off, I checked her email. Clean. Her phone was locked, but didn't take me long to crack it. Our daughter's birth date. Found a few sketchy messages, but nothing from George. His name in her contacts wasn't odd considering he was my pal. Maybe he was just talking trash, I thought. Yet her recent behavior hinted something's amiss. Perhaps not with George, but someone else. The next day at the dealership, George cracked his usual Polish jokes. I usually let them slide, but today I snapped. "George, what do you even know about Poland? Bet you couldn't find it on a map if your life depended on it. You joke about Poles being dim, but I'm sure they could locate the US, maybe even our state. Get to work." George stared, lost for words. He knew I was onto something. I rang up a PI in Santa Fe and laid out my worries. He reckoned monitoring them would cost a pretty penny given their sporadic meetups. "You could slap a tracker on her phone. At least you'll know its whereabouts when you check," he suggested a tracking program and waived off payment. "Consider it a freebie," he said. I opted for the tracking software, saving cash and hassle on cameras. That night, when everyone was out cold, I sneaked up and installed the tracking app on her phone, syncing it with mine. Finally, I slept soundly. Next day at work, I kept tabs on the app. Jenna worked part-time at the uni bookstore, 15 to 20 hours a week. She called her earnings mad money. and splurged at the salon. Throughout the week, I kept tabs on her phone's location, finding nothing out of the ordinary. I was close to convincing myself George was just blowing smoke. Saturday night, while she slept, I checked her phone for messages or calls, again finding nothing. At 2 a.m., I lay there staring at the ceiling, unable to drift off. I decided to go downstairs for a drink. Sitting with a glass of Jack and Coke in one hand and her phone in the other, I decided to check it once more. Entering the password, our daughter's birth date, suddenly it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Jenna's pregnancy had been challenging. We feared losing Carrie several times due to complications. An issue with her Rh factor not matching Jenna's, causing her body to reject the baby. Jenna spent the last 3 weeks of pregnancy on bed rest. Carrie was born exactly 9 months after our wedding. They call such children wedding night babies because they're conceived on that night or during the honeymoon. A light bulb went off in my head. If George's claims were true, then there was a strong chance Jenna was already pregnant before our wedding night. Jenna was on the pill. We didn't wait until marriage to be physically engaged. The doctor speculated that stress of the wedding might have interfered with her hormones, rendering the pills ineffective. Well, if the pills failed that night, they likely failed that day too. Now I know what to do. There's a 50/50th chance I'm not the father. You know the saying, the early bird gets the worm? Well, George might have been an early bird, but in his case, it seems the early worm gets the birdie. I got off the couch and headed to the bathroom where I found some cotton swabs. Carrie was fast asleep in her room. It was simple to gently swab the inside of her cheek with a Q-tip. She didn't even stir. After sealing it in a plastic bag, I repeated the process for myself. Bright and early Monday, I took the samples to Western New Mexico University and spoke with someone in the science department. They directed me to the department head, who welcomed the opportunity. I handed over some business cards and offered a 10% discount to anyone working on the samples. The following 2 days dragged on, each moment filled with anticipation for the DNA test results. Late Wednesday evening, the department head phoned confirming the outcome. When he arrived at my dealership, his expression said it all before he even spoke. "The samples aren't related." I nodded, though the news hit hard even though I'd half expected it. After discussing a car purchase with him, I made calls to my lawyer who directed me to a family law colleague. I booked an evening appointment the next day. One thing I was certain of, George would face consequences. It didn't matter that he'd been my closest friend for years. With friends like him, enemies seemed preferable. Jenna, too, would face repercussions. She kept this truth hidden from me, the secret of her infidelity on our wedding day with my best man. That evening, I called Jenna. "Hey, I'll be spending the night in Albuquerque to prep for the auction tomorrow." I rarely ventured to Albuquerque for auctions, so this deviation was notable. I wondered if she'd exploit my absence. She'd have to come up with an excuse regarding Carrie. Nevertheless, I'd intermittently check her phone tracker throughout the evening. The auction went smoothly. I snagged some excellent cars at favorable prices. Later that afternoon, during my meeting with the family lawyer, the news wasn't encouraging. I faced losing half my assets along with alimony and child support payments for a child who wasn't even mine. In that moment, I decided against pursuing a divorce. Instead, I resolved to leave her with George's child. Paying off the mortgage on the house, she could remain there. But with only my name on the mortgage, she wouldn't be able to sell it. By continuing to cover taxes and utilities while living elsewhere, she wouldn't have the option to refinance and claim the house. However, I needed to make a decision regarding my business. Rising early feeling rejuvenated, I headed to the office before Jenna and Carrie stirred. I briefed my assistant Paul on the car purchases and instructed Anna to cease assigning work to George, emphasizing the need for secrecy. At 9 sharp, I phoned my business lawyer seeking advice. "Your business is registered, but she might still force a sale to claim half its value. Consider selling preemptively." "I can't. It's my life," I retorted. This news hit hard. I'd poured sweat and tears into building my business akin to raising a child. Unlike Carrie, I thought bitterly. Meanwhile, George showed up inquiring about the schedule for the new cars. "Hey, Kurt, when are these cars from the auction coming in? I want to plan my repairs." "The auction house will handle delivery, likely late next week," I informed him, struggling to keep calm in the presence of this betrayer. Over the following weeks, I gradually moved personal items from my house to an apartment nearby. Meanwhile, George awaited the arrival of the cars to do some work, but I kept delaying him. During the past weekend, I did some yard work and cleared out my closet and drawers when Jenna and Carrie weren't around. This brings me back to that Monday night when I told Jenna I'm leaving. She once again began to show rudeness and disrespect, targeting me for being Polish and a used car salesman. The following Tuesday morning, I arrived at the lot early and gathered my employees in the conference room. Good morning. As you all know, the cars I purchased arrived yesterday afternoon. They've all been inspected and prepped, ready for sale. We won't be using George for any more work here. I've sold the business. Surprised, they looked at me. Nothing changes regarding your roles, except Anna, who will take on some of my duties and receive a corresponding raise. When George arrived asking why he wasn't included in the meeting, I explained, because it was for staff only. And you're not an employee, George. I've sold the business and the new owner wants to go in a different direction. I can't believe you sold the business, he exclaimed. You can pick up your check for the past 2 weeks' work. It wasn't much. Anna rarely utilized your services. When I spoke with Anna, I explained the plan. I've set up companies registered in Nevada. One buys the lot, the other buys the company. I own all the shares in both. Eventually, I'll divorce Jenna and ensure she doesn't get the business. I've moved out. Jenna doesn't know yet, but I'm not going back. She had an affair with George. In fact, Carrie isn't my daughter. I suspect she's George's. I also asked Anna to order a new sign and letterhead, changing the business name to Hopeless Auto to reinforce the idea to George and Jenna that the business was under new ownership. Though she seemed puzzled, she trusted me enough to follow through. About 2 hours later, I received a call from Jenna. This was a familiar pattern. I'd leave for a day or two, she'd call, we'd talk, and I'd return. I decided to answer, curious to hear what she would say. Kurt, what's going on? She asked hesitantly. Nothing much, just heading to Albuquerque. Why are you going there? To pick up a car? So what I heard must not be true. George called and said you sold the business. Why would he call you? I questioned. He's your best friend. He was curious if I knew. Best friend, what a joke. This is my company. I owned it before we got married, and I can sell it whenever I want. I used the money to pay off the house. You only need to worry about utilities and taxes now. What about food, gas, insurance? She almost hysterically asked. Guess I overlooked those. Do you think you could work more hours? When are you coming home? I won't return. Remember what you said when I left that evening? Don't worry, I'll figure out how to cover the bills so the power won't be shut off. You can't do this, Kurt. You need to come back. No, I really don't want to. What about your daughter? You mean Carrie, the girl who's ashamed of her last name and the fact that her old man is a used car salesman? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. I won't be back again, so none of you will be embarrassed of me. With those words, I hung up and powered off the phone. Over the next 3 months, I journeyed through northern New Mexico, Arizona, southern Utah, and Colorado. I stayed close in case Anna needed me. Of course, they kept calling, at first annoyance, then apologies, finally hints of resentment. When they reported my canceled credit card, I chuckled. George even called, branding me a villain for leaving Jenna and Carrie. I chuckled some more. After approximately 3 months and covering 8,000 miles, I opted to head back to Silver City. Upon arrival at Hopeless Auto, I was warmly welcomed by my entire team. That evening at dinner with my employees, Anna said, You know, Kurt, you might feel hopeless and lost, but you're mistaken. You simply place trust in those you loved. You may be Polish, but those jokes never truly defined you. Glancing at the wall clock, I noted it was around 8:30. A realization struck me. It was time for a confrontation. I rose, hopped into my Miata, and drove to my house. Disappointment washed over me as I pulled into the driveway. The yard was unkempt, the landscaping neglected. I approached the door and knocked. Carrie answered, her eyes widening. Dad? Hi, Carrie. Is your mom home? From the kitchen, I heard Jenna's tense voice. What's the matter, Carrie? She continued to stare at me and loudly exclaimed, Dad! Jenna appeared, spotting me and shrieking. Just then, George emerged from the bedroom in his underwear. Oh, I remarked. The whole family is here. Mom, Dad, and child. What the hell are you talking about? Jenna retorted. I guess George has stepped in to fill my role. After all, it's rightfully his. Turning to Carrie, I disclosed, Carrie, I know you dislike being called Polish, so here's some news. Your real father isn't me, it's George. Silence enveloped the room. Yes, Jenna. It seems your carelessness on our wedding day resulted in a child, but not mine. However, it's good news for you, Carrie. You can now take your real father's last name. With a swift motion, I handed them the DNA report. See for yourselves. They snatched it, glanced at it, and both collapsed. Carrie, inform the lovebirds that your mom will be served with divorce papers next week, along with an eviction notice. 4 months later, we stood before a judge and finalized our divorce. George was present too. Exiting the courthouse, Jenna suggested, "Maybe we can grab a drink, the traditional way." "Certainly," I agreed, despite the previous animosity having dissipated. Then I thought, this marks the end of my association with them. They can now be together. Let them wallow in their own mess. They deserve each other. Despite being Polish, I demand respect, and I got it. In the end, the jokes were on them.